Hello, everyone. Welcome to Cyber Weekly. I am Deogracious Okelo, your podcast host, and I am with Josephine Olok, my co-host. In this podcast, we talk about cybersecurity and all matters related to cyber. I am glad you made it. So, Josephine, how has your week been?
Not bad. A bit hectic, Dale, but hasn't been bad. Thank you. How about yours?
Mine has been battling with school and getting things up and running here and there. But yeah. So
have you got any certificates? Have you done any exams this week or tests?
Yeah, I did a program for interviewing people on Skillshare. I needed to improve on that. So hopefully my skills will be exposed here, either well or poorly, who knows?
That's good. Well done on that. That's very good. Yeah, we'll see.
So there are two key areas we'll be talking about today, which is cloud computing and I've got my notes right, is collaboration, yes. So now, cloud computing. So with cloud computing, we talk about, first of all, cloud being a platform where people can easily use virtual resources from anywhere in the world and can easily dynamically scale it up or down. Meaning if you want extra space, you can easily add more. If you want to reduce the space, you can reduce. If you want extra resources, all the computer resources being virtual and easily scalable.
Yeah.
So now, first of all, have you used cloud?
Yes, I have.
And what was your experience with it?
I think for me, it's about convenience. I've been using cloud for a while now. And, having software in the cloud, for instance, financial software in the cloud for us has been it's been very easy to use. It means we don't have to manage software in-house. We don't have to worry about upgrades and things like that. Or we don't have to worry about where the server sits. So using cloud as a software as a service, that one has been very good. And obviously, we use email on the cloud. So for me, it's been good because it's flexible and it's convenient. And a lot of overheads are removed from it.
Okay. So what are some of the outstanding cloud platforms you've used?
I've used Google and Microsoft Azure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which one stood out for you in your experience? I don't want to mention names of
to be honest, okay, and I've also used private cloud, but to be honest, they've all provided the same level of convenience. So I wouldn't say anyone stood out.
Okay. So in your perspective, what is a good cloud platform?
I think it depends. Again, it depends a lot because it depends what you're looking for in a cloud, right? So what I would say is good. I think good is, as I said, good is relative, and I talked about using software on the cloud, so software as a service. Then you also have other models that you can use, obviously, as infrastructure as a service or platform as a service. But I think essentially what I would consider good is cost. Cost obviously is a big factor, and I think you have to be able to weigh the cost of having, on-premise services or having, stuff on the cloud. And I think when you look at cloud, it's kind of the difference between renting and buying, yeah, or leasing and buying. So on cloud, you're renting space, you're renting services. On premises, you're actually buying the things yourself. But you have to look at the cost. Does the cost make sense? I think that is one thing. Then the other thing is that how flexible is it in terms of how easy is it to use, and is it available? Is it readily available? Is it can you integrate it with what you have? So if you're looking at going to cloud, if you have applications already, are you able to easily integrate those applications onto that platform, or do you need to do some modification, which doesn't help? Is it secure? Is it available? I think it really depends on your needs, but also because you're engaging a third party. I think what's important is, are you able to get support when something happens, when something goes wrong? Because a lot of in terms of the compliance of the setup, it's important that you have support and documentation, that you're able to document. So if you're a regulated entity, you're able to have contracts that say what services are you getting. Is it a shared platform? Is it a shared platform? You might be dealing with data of people who might have data set where that doesn't allow your data to sit in certain geographical areas. So you need to be aware of that when you take your, say, data to the cloud. So does it meet the compliance requirements of your organization? Is it secure? Do you feel secure? Do you have SLAs with the vendor? I think all those are important, but I think ultimately it's about what it is you're looking for and what kind of pricing or budget you are also having. But obviously, security and compliance are key with this. You're on mute.
I don't know how to explain that one for a cybersecurity person.
Which one?
Being on mute.
Oh, yeah.
So can companies exist in this day and age without cloud?
I would say it depends on the company. I think corporate companies which have a lot, which need the infrastructure. I think it's difficult for me to see them existing without cloud. I think what COVID did was suddenly highlight the importance of being able to access your information, your application from anywhere, because you're not able to go to the office. So I think it's difficult now, especially post-COVID, for me to see companies who have applications and systems not to have some element of cloud. On the other hand, of course, there are always companies that don't operate online. I mean, in Uganda, let's be realistic. There are many companies that still have perhaps manual records, but obviously a lot of companies have computers and things like that. But there are still companies that would not operate online. So, but I find it hard to see that the total absence of cloud with many companies.
Okay. So, in your experience, also, how long have you used cloud?
I think it's hard to imagine to say because
As a company.
As a company, I would say for a long time, and I'm saying it's hard to say because there's a lot of things that we assume are not cloud. But for instance, our email system has been running since the 90s, yes, and we've not managed it in house since then. So that's a long time. So I'd say as far back as that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you find it a very important resource now, like for emails?
Yeah, I think, listen, cloud is making it easy to roll out. I mean, it plays a really critical part in digital transformation because you don't then get hampered by having to invest in infrastructure and things like that. I think what cloud computing does is it kind of abstracts the detail of some of the things that previously we had to do in-house. So it allows you to then to focus on the things that you want to do. So I think and increasingly a lot of offerings. So before, for instance, you would buy if we take the example of a financial system, before you would buy the disk, right? You'd buy the disk, you'd install it on your servers, you'd run it for however length of time. And then at some stage you have to upgrade, then you buy the upgrade and then you put it on your server and then you'd run it again. Now the suppliers of those kinds of things have now also migrated to the cloud because it makes it easier for them to roll out as well. So you find yourself now not being able to even buy that disk and whatever and install it. Now you have to pay a monthly subscription for that service. So I think increasingly the technology is making it easier for companies to provide the service on the cloud. And less overheads for you as a company. In the long term, perhaps the cost of leasing versus the cost of purchase might be more. But it is one of those things where technology is just going to keep moving. And do you say stuck or do you move with it? I think you have to move with it. You have to look at the cost, obviously, as an OPEX cost versus a CAPEX cost, but this is the cost of doing business.
First, explain those terms, by the way.
Okay, operational expenditure is the cost that it's like part of your fixed cost, yeah. So it's the cost that you spend monthly. Then CAPEX is your capital expenditure, so the cost of buying something like an asset, like a car or a server or something like that. And it also means CAPEX normally obviously it's a one-off cost. And then you buy that, whatever you buy becomes an asset that then gives you value. OPEX cost is one of the costs that you have to keep spending over, like on a monthly basis.
Oh, I'm sure cloud means you're supposed to be spending on a monthly basis.
Yes, it's definitely an operational expenditure cost.
Do you find it more challenging to do that, or now, like in the sense that you find that also cloud, when it comes to upgrade, it's much more easier that you want to consume more in the long run. So when it comes to costs, do you find that using cloud is much more better in terms of cost, because you find that you don't have to pay when it comes to upgrading? Like, okay, the costs for upgrading are less compared to if you already had a standalone, server. So you have to again buy new hardware. And if you look at the cost, do you find that it outweighs the cost of actually using cloud?
Yeah, as I said, it depends. Yeah, but yeah, if you look at it that way, is that cost that is the actual financial cost, but the cost of that overhead cost of having to actually get somebody to upgrade and things like that. So that tends to be a higher cost. But you have to do your before you do well. Also, your return on investment. You have to look at it and see, before you say I'm going to migrate to cloud. Look at does it make sense in terms of the cost. If I was to buy and the cost of setting up the servers and all that stuff cost versus the cost of leasing that. You need to look at that cost and see if it makes sense to your organization.
Okay.
Yeah.
Some key areas you highlighted at the beginning were support, and SLAs. Could you highlight more on that and what you usually consider when it comes to those two items?
Okay, so I think with any third-party vendor that a company signs on, you need to first of all be very clear what services you're getting from that vendor. And then also, it's also okay. You start obviously with what are my requirements. Then it's what service, what can that vendor provide against those requirements, and then have something contractual that ensures that the vendor delivers against those requirements. Now, with cloud computing, there should also be the element of because it's a third-party service, and I'm relying on that service to be available, I need to be able to have some levels of availability and some contractual that allows me to, to get back some cost. So service level agreement that says your availability, for instance, needs to be 99%, 98%. In the event that that is not available, what are the consequences? Do I get some money back or whatever it is? So you need to have something contractual that allows that to happen. You need to have make sure that at the end of the day, when your service is sitting in the cloud and you are responsible for delivering that service, you cannot outsource the responsibility for that service. So the only way you can ensure that the service is delivered against what you as you want it is that I think it's the best thing is do it contractually. So if your service goes down, it's not going to be the third party that explains to your customers, for instance, why the service is down. You need to make sure that the vendor is able to have, say, backup plans. The vendor is not going to give you slow speeds of access, for instance. That if you want, for instance, to upgrade the storage, that it's going to be easy. So all those requirements need to be thingy. So that is a level of support you want, that you have contact people on the vendor side. You don't want it to be so abstracted that you don't even know who to deal with in the event that the service goes down. So you need to have to know contact people who you can deal with in the event that something wrong happens. Because at the end of the day, these things happen. You need to be a level of comfort that there's security systems in place for that. You need to make sure that it's not easy to access your systems online. So make sure that the vendor has some kind of identity and access management that way that you're comfortable with. So all those are factors that should be contractual, that will allow you to govern that agreement or contract with the vendor. You're on mute.
Since it's becoming a habit.
I don't know what's happening today.
So would you feel safe keeping information in the cloud within Africa or in another continent?
I think it just depends on the cloud service provider and whether they have a record or not. I wouldn't mind. I think obviously where the cloud is based is determines perhaps things like speeds of access and things like that. But this is all things that it's all the due diligence that you need to do to make sure that you're comfortable. And I think the cloud that you use has to depend on what it is you're using it for. So you wouldn't if you had data which had data for, say, which is data on customers who are European, for instance, you don't want to fall foul of the GDPR regulations about where the data sits. So you don't want the data, for instance, to sit in the US, because in the US, when data sits there, it means that the authorities have easy access to it, for instance. So there's some restrictions on where that data sits. So you need to make sure that what you're using it for does not conflict with your regulations, but it also meets the your requirements. So I wouldn't say I wouldn't put it anywhere. It has to be based on what I need it for.
So now, like the government regulations, which are concerning cloud, especially here in Uganda, that you're supposed to make sure that information of Ugandans are kept within, and they're not supposed to be accessed by other external parties. How do you handle such situations?
I mean, I think the easy answer to that is that you don't then put that in the cloud where you don't know where the cloud is based. It needs to be cloud based in Uganda. Yeah.
Next is collaboration. Now, with the collaboration, this was inspired by that story of Qatar and Rwanda partnering to improve the technology in Rwanda, among them being the research for AI and also for this collaboration with Qatar involves improving public key infrastructure and the public key infrastructure and support for AI research. So now, I'm not very comfortable with, having AI involved, especially when it comes to key information, like public key information. So what are your opinions concerning that? Do you agree with it, or?
Maybe I should ask you why you're not comfortable with it.
Well, because I don't know where the information is being kept and also being mined, and how is it the implication of the information being misused. And remember, with AI, you're supposed to train the algorithm to, do what you want it to do. So it has to use a particular data set in order for it to come up with a solution. Just like any other person, you gather information that choose the best alternative based on the information you've got. So I don't know how much information it requires and where it is, how it's managing it in order for me to be like, yes, I completely believe you. And at what extent does this benefit me, or does it benefit you more from collecting the data? And are there back doors that you find that the person who actually created for you this application is actually, siphoning information based on what you're giving it? So yeah, those are like key worries for me when it comes to AI.
Okay. I hear you there. That makes sense. When I read the collaboration agreement between that you shared, the link you shared, Qatar and Rwanda, I got the impression that it was more about it's kind of exchanging information and developing and strategies around developing infrastructure, so public key infrastructure, and also doing more research and development into AI. So that is what I got, and from the brief look I had at it, that is the first impression I got. I didn't think of it as my first concern. It wasn't a concern. It was, my first thought was, this is good because both sides will collaborate in research, yeah, and look at research in terms of how that research can benefit key sectors in both sides. So if you look at how AI could be used to set up. I think they talked about smart cities and things like that. Because at the end of the day, AI is not going to be restricted to any one sector. It can be used in many sectors. So I thought if you have a relationship where uh, there's collaboration, but also support in terms of research and development, which costs money, and one party is able to fund that and help perhaps further the research ideas, case studies, use cases, innovation capacities of another, and you share knowledge and collaborate. I didn't see that as a bad thing at all. Um, Perhaps it would be interesting to know then. I know to address your concern is who is developing the AI and who has control over it if you're collaborating. I think that would be where I would kind of be concerned. But at the on the onset, I would say, yeah, I mean, why not? It's like institutions or university institutions collaborating in research and development and then exchanging ideas to develop that research even further. So I don't see that initially as a concern, but I do get what you're saying.
Okay. So so you've dealt with collaborations before, and you know, a good example would be maybe companies getting on board with InterSwitch or Visa so that they can improve their technologies and all that, or MasterCard, to make payments more easy. Do you find them challenging?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting question because I think it's anything that is where you have a relationship with somebody else is always going to be challenging. Um, it's never going to be easy because you have, especially business relationships and partnerships, um, you need to have a relationship where you're both gaining from that partnership. I think it's challenging relationships are where you feel perhaps you're dealing with a monopoly and you have no choice in some of the terms and agreements that that monopoly is offering you. And I won't mention names here, but it, it, I think it's difficult, especially in the financial industry, to operate alone because there's so many dependencies. There's so many strategic partnerships that you have to have. So as you said, MasterCard, ATM switching, all those are things that it's very hard to have a network of ATMs without going through an aggregator like say InterSwitch, because then you limit yourself by your network. But if you then connect to InterSwitch, it means you can use any other ATM anywhere in the country, which makes sense, right? But I think the challenge is how do you execute the agreement so that it is beneficial to both of you and you don't feel like you're losing, whether it's on transaction costs or what have you. So sometimes it's about having in the beginning having an agreement that that meets that requirement, but also it's about monitoring that agreement and having and making sure that it continues to meet your requirements, being able to have the ability to change or exit the agreement is fine, but it is the relationship that you keep working on, because it's not going to be. It doesn't just stop at having signing an agreement. It stops at it keeps on going. Every day you've got to work at it. It's like a marriage. You have to nurture it. Yeah.
Do you find that sometimes why do they sometimes fail, these collaborations? You Yes, basically that. Why do some collaborations fail?
I think perhaps they don't work down the line. I think we all start off with nice ideas. You know that you start off knowing that this is going to make, in business sense, you normally start off knowing that if I enter this into this agreement, I know that you can even project that you're going to make money because this is what is going to happen. Either you're going to get more transactions from a wider ATM network or whatever. So you're looking at it from you're forecasting a relation, some profit or some gains from this relationship. So one of the failures is down the line you realize that actually perhaps the cost of this transaction doesn't make sense, and I'm not making money because the money that I'm making, perhaps a lot of it is going back to the other partner. So that's one cost. Environments change, so the economic environment changes. Somebody might it might not be cost effective anymore because it becomes too expensive. It might be that the other party, their circumstances change. Perhaps they get taken over. Perhaps they lose money in another thing. So there's so many reasons that things can change. But as you know, the environment is always going to change. Whether it is a political environment, social, it's a business, strategic. So there's so many things that can happen that make it go wrong. But at the end of the day, you know, companies are staffed by human beings. So, you know, things will always change. You're on mute.
How do you usually manage now in terms of if you find that the company you're collaborating with has very stringent agreements, yet you need the service? How do you manage that?
I think you have to be able to negotiate. You have to be able to negotiate for terms which suit you. And if you can't do that, then you should have the option of walking away. I think if you get into an agreement where you're not winning, it's unlikely for you to ever win.
Does it usually always boil down to like cost benefit? And yes, does it usually boil down to cost benefit, especially in terms of collaboration?
I think that's a key driver. That's a key driver, definitely. But I think there are other factors that you have to consider. But I would say that is a key driver. But you know, a lot of everything that a business does should also be driven by the business's strategic objectives. So even if it's beneficially good for you, if it doesn't meet with your strategic objectives, if your strategic objectives change, your circumstances change, and that agreement or that collaboration no longer meets your objective, that could also be a good reason not for it for you to end that collaboration. Yeah, and collaborations also don't have to be open-ended. You know, they can be time bound. You might collaborate because you need deliverable project. Maybe it's a 1-year project, 2-year project. After that, perhaps you don't need to continue to collaborate, or you might have gained expertise in an area on which you had previously collaborated, and you no longer need that collaboration. So there are different circumstances under which you end that.
I guess we shall end there for today. Thank you all for attending, and see you in the next one.